Gates Adams here on behalf of Apex Trader Funding. I'm here with Shakila today. Shakila, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Gates. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Well, the reason we have you here is because you're another Apex Trader Funding success story, getting paid out, which, of course, when it comes to trading, that's the ultimate goal. So, what you have just experienced is every trader's ultimate desire. So, congratulations on that.
Thank
Congratulations on your
you.
success. So,
Thank you. I'm so
uh,
excited.
as you should be. You've earned the right to be excited for sure. So let's learn a little bit more about you and your trading history and kind of figure out how you got here if we could. So first of all, how long have you been trading?
I would say actively looking at charts and trying to trade not more than probably 16 months. That's very
Okay.
specific, but the reason I'm being specific is because I joined a program, and when I joined that is what I consider the start.
Right.
But I did
And
have a couple years before that where I was just throwing money at things on, my phone, but there was no real intention or strategy. So I
right.
consider the last, year and a quarter to be the real active trading career part.
Gotcha. So this program that you did, was that specifically futures, or were you starting off with any other sort of instruments?
Mainly they were trading options, but the strat can apply to anything like
Right.
Forex, futures, and all that. So I ended up moving the futures later, but at first, like many people, it was all options.
So ultimately, what was the trigger that transitioned you from options into futures?
Well, full transparency, I kind of no longer had my own capital to put
Mhm.
into this. I had set aside a certain amount and I was like, this is what I'll use to learn.
Mhm.
And obviously that wasn't enough because you never stop learning, right? But in
Right.
order to keep applying, changing, trialing, I needed a way to have access to capital, whether in a sim format or a funded format. And it kept coming up in our group because it's kind of a big group. And a lot of these guys were either self-funded or they had gone through, a partner route. So, how many months I was hearing the name Apex and so on that I was like,
Right.
maybe this is worth checking out. But I don't think I actively started to look at futures until probably August of last year. So now that's been, 8 or 9 months that I've
Sure.
had one instrument since then.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now you referenced the group that you're in and hearing about funding and that kind of thing. Honestly, what was
Yeah.
the first thought that you had when someone presented the idea that a company might fund your trading?
Yeah, I think there's always a certain level of like disbelief or like, you kind of are like, what's the catch? Like, what do
Right.
I have to do to get in on that? But they took the time to explain how it works. And, you learn real quick,
Sure.
after your first few where you're trialing, you're like, okay, I get it. I see how this business model is set up and I can see how everybody can win. If everybody can win, it's great. So, but yeah,
Exactly.
obviously at first you don't think that that's a real thing, probably.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
I think you might have had a little bit of an advantage over some other traders that you were a part of a group where you had built connections and these people, so it was almost like a recommendation, or maybe it was directly a recommendation, which
Yeah.
certainly helps with that skeptical mentality. But I think a lot of times people are almost afraid to admit that, yeah, I didn't believe this would really work in the beginning.
For sure. And obviously, but until you know, you don't know, right?
Right.
But I can say now, several months of working with, your guys' company and other traders who use Apex, we've
Right.
seen over the months people are getting funded, paid out, and so forth. So
Sure.
I feel very secure and confident to promote it, to send my affiliate link, just the way that happened to me. I'm gonna send it to the next guy just because, like, hey,
Right.
this is happening. It's real, come through.
Exactly. Prior, have you, without necessarily mentioning any names if you have, but have you worked with any other funding companies or prop firms?
Yeah, I trialed a couple other ones in the past before landing on Apex, and that was just because they were the other top names that popped
Sure.
up. I didn't really have a reference point for what's good or what's ideal. And then later, as I got more invested into this specific instrument, this Apex kept popping up, and then one of my very good close friends, who you guys have also had on, John, we did
Oh,
a few
yeah.
interviews with him. He was like a big proponent, and
Mhm.
and someone he's close to me, and we have a lot it's good repertoire. So when he was
Sure.
saying, hey, I've tried a lot of these, but this is the one that stands out to me. Here's why. I'm going to take him on his word.
Right.
And I'm glad that I did, because I can see why,
So
So
specifically for you, because I think this answer is going to be different for different people. What was it that stood out for you about the Apex structure versus somebody else that you've worked with in the past?
um so somebody might see this as a little bit more degenerate of me, but personally, I love that it's a one-step program.
Mhm.
I did not appreciate needing to prove myself twice. I know you can, whatever you think is fine, but I really like that it was a one-step
Sure.
pass. The split was very generous, not to mention the first 25,000 is unsplit. It's just
Right.
all yours.
100%. Yeah.
And then I don't know when this was implemented, but the twice monthly payout option, if you become consistent, that's essentially like getting payroll in a way. If
Right.
you're disciplined and treating this as a career, which is the goal for most of us,
Right.
that's payroll.
Right.
So that was all very attractive to me, even though I'm not yet at the level to be there, knowing that that exists and is accessible. That's very attractive personally.
Well, I think that brings up a good point. Ultimately, when you're making a decision like this, the big picture matters because this is the company that you're building a relationship with. So you want to find the company that maybe, I mean, ideally, they're going to have the lowest entry point price. They're going to have the lowest back end price. They're going to have the best payout structure, this, that, and the other thing. But ultimately, there's a lot of different factors that go into what makes a funding company more appealing to one person or another. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of people make to jump in because of one factor for that immediate gratification. And then they find out later on down the road that it's less appealing 6 months down the line when they've gotten paid out a couple of times, hopefully, or have blown so many accounts because of a different rule structure that long-term vision of what the relationship is going to be, because that's the whole point. I mean, really and truly, I don't think it's realistic for most traders to expect that unless they've been trading and consistent for a while, that they're going to come in, pass their first evaluation, and start pulling out money, one after another after another. It takes time, and the dynamics change at every step of the way. So, in terms of building that relationship, I'm a big proponent of looking at the whole big picture when making a decision like that versus, oh, these guys have a great sale and Apex has 80% off, but these guys have 90% off.
Sure.
Well, what's the long-term cost of that? So
Yes.
anyway.
And I am attracted to those sales as well, but it's all the other
Who
things that
isn't?
I mentioned. I mean, I mentioned everything else first for a reason,
Right.
because that's kind of the long-term picture too. But yeah, I really appreciate the structure. And then, also I'm active on the Facebook group, and there's like a high level of engagement from the team and then also the users of the program. So it's nice to have like everybody that's using it, sharing their feedback and their
Sure.
experience too. It's all
Sure.
built in there.
Now, let me ask you if you're comfortable. Are you trading one account or are you trading multiple accounts at this point?
So right now I have one that went live this week and two that are going to go live in the next week.
Okay.
So I'll technically have three that are live. And I do have the copy trader. However, in the past, I've also been kind of destroyed by that in my own, in recklessness and whatnot. So I'm a little bit cautious of like linking accounts right this second. But I think that I will probably trade the three at different times and kind of hopefully get my bearings, spread the risk, and then maybe I'll link them in the future, just not yet.
Well, if there's a hesitation to do so, there's probably a reason for that, but that could be a situation where you build up some buffer on each one of them and then link them where the risk isn't quite as high.
Totally. I have the copy trader. It was a one-time fee, so I can just do that whenever I'm ready.
I love it. I trade on the trade copier. I love it. So now, have you had an opportunity to interact with Apex customer support at this point?
I don't think that I've ever needed to, which also speaks to itself. Because in my opinion, if you just go and read the FAQ, you'll have like 99% of your questions answered. But that's the kind of person I am. I'm going to go before I ever got my first funded account. And when it was still in process, I said, I'm just going to spend the afternoon like reading the entire website because
Right.
I don't want to mess this up and I want to figure out what I need to do. And I was kind of excited, but that was just me kind of nerding out. But I find that, I can find most of my questions there. But no, I
Right.
haven't needed support for anything yet.
Sure.
And if I do, I know I can get it pretty easily.
Right. They get rave reviews more so probably than even Daryl and John.
Yes.
So, well, great. Now let's talk about you. At one point, you talked about you were trading your own funds, and now, of course, you're trading as a funded trader.
Right.
What would you say for you? Let's take away the experience. Let's take away the fact that we're talking about different instruments. But for you, what's the difference in your world trading in a funded account versus having to make that deposit to trade?
Um, I guess psychologically, I know that there's still risk on the
Mhm.
table, but just to kind of know that there's a little bit of a safety net in the trailing drawdown, let's just say, and I kind of like that I'm responsible for building my buffer first before sizing up or anything versus if I just have 5 grand, I might size up on day one because I'm whatever
Right.
psychologically, I'm like, I have a huge buffer. So knowing that it's something I need to be slow and consistent at, I think for me psychologically, that's to my benefit.
Sure.
Because I need to kind of almost earn the sizing up or the trading frequency
Right.
versus let me just throw in a couple grand and today's my lucky day, and that's a me thing. And I know a lot of people would look down on that and I get why, but just to know that there is a system where I can, it's almost like if you have that problem, I've now made that invisible. That's no
Mhm.
longer part of my psychology when
Right.
trading, not an option, it's just not an option. So
Sure.
I appreciate that in the funding partner route that I've taken. I don't need all that startup cash. I
Right.
definitely probably wouldn't be able to fund 1 or 10 ES on my own, but
Sure.
at least here I can start with, minis or sorry, micros and scale
Mhm.
up from there.
Exactly. Well, excellent. So if you ran across somebody who is just getting started down this path of funding and maybe had a few questions, what's the biggest piece of advice that you would give somebody as they enter into the world of being a funded trader?
Specifically in the funded trader partner part.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would say, and this is advice I would have to give myself, I would say, because I'm still very much in the process. But firstly, I would say that there's no rush,
Mhm.
because we tend to think that like this is our one shot. This is our way out of the rat race. This is our way to make all our losses back,
Right.
whatever. There really cannot be a sense of urgency, and the fact that the market is going to be there tomorrow and the next day, and it's always been there, and it's going to keep being there. Really, you have to pace yourself because that's when I find myself being impulsive or putting risk on. I'm like, today's the day, like that kind of thinking. It's not helpful. So I would say slow it down if you can. This is to me again, but if it helps someone, great. So yeah, there's always tomorrow. And the other thing I would say is probably that not every trade is worth your time. I've spent a lot of mental capital chasing positions or monitoring positions that the juice was not worth the squeeze.
Right.
And if I was just more patient or hands off, the next thing would have appeared and I could have put that on instead of these smaller nonsense trades. So
Sure.
slow it down, and don't take every bite, it's not worth it. Not every trade is worth your time for sure.
My kids call that FOMO,
Yes, yes.
the fear of
Big
missing
one.
out.
It's a big
Not,
one.
yeah, and you know what, we've all suffered from that for sure. It is a, I think, a valuable lesson when you can really take deeply and internally the fact that there's no rush.
Yeah, yeah. And I
This is
still,
not this is not the one. This is not the one and only one.
right. Oh, yeah, because so many times I seen a huge day and I was like, it's never gonna happen again. And like literally 3 weeks later, the market is doing the same thing. And I'm like, wait, we just had one of these. So every time I have those big days that I missed out on, first of all, I wasn't planning to take that trade anyway, because you can't
Right.
plan for these days. And second of all, it's gonna happen again in this market that we've been in for the last 2 years. It's gonna
Right.
happen. So
Exactly.
I'm learning slowly to regulate and, temper myself a little bit, because it was very exciting at first. And now after 15, 16 months, it's like, okay, we've seen these types of days quite frequently.
Sure. Well, this has really been such a pleasure. It's just this is one of the highlights of my day when I get to do this, is just talking to traders who are either just starting to see and feel that success, or are on a roll, and they're 3, 4, 5, 6 months in a row of getting paid out. And that to me is just, I mean, this is where everybody wants to be. And it's just such a great opportunity to highlight and showcase a handful of you guys, and just let the world see what's going on over here at Apex Trader Funding. So very, very much appreciate your time today. We are doing these pretty consistently now, so maybe a couple months down the road, after a few more payouts and some consistency, maybe we can catch up again and see where you are from there. Does that sound good?
All right. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you guys for setting this all up, and I hope to be back on in the next couple months.
I have no doubt we'll see you again here soon.
All right. Thanks, Gates. Appreciate
You
it.
got it. Thank you, Shakila. I appreciate it.
Take care. Take care.